Hello, and thanks for clicking in. This is the one and only Foreign Orchid, and you can follow me on Twitter at Foreign Orchid. Recently, there's been this idea getting traction on social media that everyone who voted for Donald Trump, or even just didn't vote for Secretary Clinton, is either a racist or an accomplice to racism. While such statements provide a sense of catharsis for those making them, ultimately I think these kinds of statements don't help us. And I don't mean that in a trite, we should all just shut up and fall in line kind of way, but actually that these statements make it harder for us to bridge the divides that we have and work together to build a more reasonable and cohesive union. This last election cycle saw a lot of angry people on both sides of the political divide, and now in the aftermath we are faced with a challenge to figure out why things happened the way they did. We should not abandon this duty to simple denunciations of the other and similar cries to not let this become normal. In this video, I want to tackle some of the issues with using this kind of language. To start off, we should understand that the electorate can be broken into four distinct groups. The first are the self-described racists who actually did vote for President-elect Trump. Second are the conservative-leaning people who voted for the President-elect. Third are those on the left who already voted for Secretary Clinton. And finally, the fourth group are those who are sympathetic to Secretary Clinton and to the left, but either didn't vote or voted for a third-party candidate. With these four groups in mind, let's look at the first one, actual self-acknowledging racists. To them, such denouncements of their behavior will have no effect. They aren't listening, and they have no desire to listen. Indeed, telling a Klan member he is racist may be taken more as a badge of honor than anything else. And it should be noted that actual racists, people who believe in the genetic superiority of one race over another, are fleetingly rare. As we pass beyond the actual racists, we find ourselves looking at the second and the fourth groups. These are the great many folks caught in the middle, the ones being called accomplices to racism or worse. And it's at this point I think it's important to recognize one of the great insights of social psychology. We are a tribal species. When we sense a threat, we look to form bonds, and in forming those bonds, we forge new social intuitions that help us rally around particular objects or ideas. The rhetoric being used intuitively recognizes this. It seeks to forge those new social intuitions around a condemnation of races. But where it fails is in recognizing that the group comes before the social structure. By elevating a threat and trying to rally people around a central idea before forging that social bond, it alienates those two groups. Someone who is not a self-actualizing racist, but voted for President-elect Trump, is now feeling under assault. This unpleasant sense is going to inspire them to look for close allies, to look at their friends and their families who they already trust and know to be good people, people who likely voted in a similar way as them. Thus, they dig in. They have their tribe, and their rallying object is the rejection of this kind of message. We will no longer be able to pierce the barriers being raised. But this isn't limited to those who voted for the president-elect. Even those sympathetic to the left, those in the fourth group that still have a diversity of friends, must now reconcile this message with their lived experience. They must decide if their moderately conservative best friend is actually an evil person. If that isn't congruent with their experiences, this message will fall flat. Worse yet, the fourth group that should actually be on the same side as those pushing this message are pushed farther away. This, I think, is the clearest accounting for what actually happened on the election day. The Republican Party didn't really gain more votes in terms of raw numbers or major demographics compared to Governor Romney, but the Democrats lost votes. They cut out parts of their own base, those that would have been in this fourth group. The third group being targeted by this message are those left-leaning folks who already voted for Secretary Clinton. These are obviously people who don't need to be convinced of the veracity of the claim. But that really isn't the goal of such a statement. Rather, it serves as a vocal signal that I am one of the good people with commitment. It is reminiscent of a story about a speech that Stalin gave. After he finished, the room of listeners stood up and applauded, and kept applauding. Minutes went by. Everyone wanted to stop, but no one wanted to be the first one to stop. The first one to signal that their commitment was anything less than absolute. Once one brave person did, the crowd was able to pull back. But that one brave person found themselves on the first train to the gulag the next morning. These kinds of videos serve that same kind of signaling function to your own side, that you are still applauding. But we need to find that one brave person who is willing to stop the applauding and give us all room to breathe. The Greek tragedy of all of this is that people can have their minds changed, but doing so is not accomplished through biting denouncements or throwing out bits of data. It is a longer process. We all should know this from our own online activities. We have likely never met someone committed to a point that changed their idea through rancorous debate. Of course, the clear retort here is that this is supposed to act to shame folks, and just as shaming smokers has helped bring down the rate of smoking in the US, it should help here. But unfortunately, these are not really comparable issues. Smoking is a highly social and persistent event. Voting is a private and rare event. Smoking doesn't have the ambiguity of political values and trade-offs. Ultimately, shame, while a powerful force, isn't going to find strong purchase in the more muddled climate of politics. As the gay experience in the US can educate us, views can be changed through gentle and loving exposure. Coming to know and love someone who turns out to be gay is the simplest and best solution to combating homophobia. Vitriolic condemnation isn't. The best way to convince people to join your side is by living a good and caring life. This election season has seen the greatest rise in animosity yet. So let's fight that animosity. Let's look at how we can bring people together with alternate views to our own. Come to know them and their feelings as well as our own. And with that commitment to mutual understanding, we can pave the way for a more united future. The holiday season is upon us now. This will be an instance where a great many people will be exposed to family members with wildly different views. Thus, this is our chance to take that first step on a long road of combating animosity. Keep in mind that classic insight that no one is the villain in their own journey, and accusations only serve to draw bright lines in the sand, lines that can't be crossed by either side. Instead, ask those with different views about why they feel the way they do. Explain to them how you feel concerned about things, and try and encourage them to approach you with questions so that they can commit to this journey with you. And with that said, I'd like to thank you for listening to this video. If you would, please like, subscribe, and comment down below, and tell me how your Thanksgiving weekend is going.